Add my welcome to comrades. Look forward to a productive working day and a thorough discussion of the important tasks that face us. Just to emphasise in terms of the culture that we try to have in HOPI, a productive day to us does not mean that this is a sort of rally and we self-congratulation love fest where we tap each other on the back and say how well we've done for the last 12 months. I think we have done well for the last 12 months, but I think it's also very important that we're self-critical, that we look in a partisan but an ambitious type of way at our organisation to see both its strengths but also its weaknesses and failings. So I've been lumbered on that basis with giving a report of work, which is a positive report, I hope, but it also will mean that I will highlight where I see personally some weaknesses that have been discussed on the steering committee. I'll also try to be brief because we have a lot on the agenda. I'm not being brief because we haven't done much work. Comrades will be aware that actually for still a small campaign, we have got through a tremendous amount of work this year. I think we have to up our game in the coming year. I think the election of Obama has not meant that the threat of war on Iran has gone away. In fact, from my point of view, the soft war that has been waged on Iran already in the form of sanctions is quite likely to be stepped up over the coming period. So, as an organisation, I think, given the crisis that we see around us in the more general anti-war movement, we have some serious tasks that require some serious work today. I'm going to, therefore, in that sense, go rather a little bit schematically through work. And I think the easiest place for me to start really is with the functioning of the steering committee of the past year or so. I think that is, as a leadership body, the one most open to scrutiny and an important part of our campaign, of our organisation. I don't want to preempt any discussion on the actual composition of the steering committee that will take place later on, but just give a sort of general feel of how it's functioned and some areas of weakness that I've seen. It's worthwhile, I think, reminding ourselves of how the original committee was elected, in that it wasn't really elected in a formal way. It was essentially comrades who were initially put forward, other comments were suggested to the conference, and then at the end we sort of incorporated everybody and anybody who actually had expressed a desire to be on the committee, and I think that was correct. I think it gave a statement about where HOPI was at that particular time and how we meant to incorporate different viewpoints, etc. And I think in general it has worked over the last 12 months or so. There have been problems because, which I'll highlight again later, precisely those comments who were coming forward, who were expressing an interest in being on that committee, were highly political people who were already active in other campaigns, etc. So there's been a certain patchiness on the leading committee, which I think was unavoidable, but something perhaps that we should address this year. The committee has met 7 times in total since the founding conference of the last 12 months. And as I've indicated, I think those meetings have varied in content, quality, in terms of the degree of preparation that has gone into them, and they've certainly varied in terms of the numbers who've been able to come together. These weaknesses, these problems, I think are usefully addressed. I don't agree with everything comments have written, but I think they're usefully addressed later in the conference in the motions from Manchester and from Stuart King of Permanent Revolution. One of the basic functions, one of the basic requirements of democracy of the leadership committee is obviously that question of transparency and accountability. This has been reasonable in my view, but really we could have done better. We've distributed minutes to steering group comrades on all but one occasion. However, we've only distributed, out of those 7 meetings, only distributed 3 more general reports to the wider membership, which I think is a weakness, is a failing. I think this was quite understandable in terms of comrades actually having input into the report and raising problems about reporting of names, security questions. And so again, given pressures of work on the comrade who's producing something like that, eventually it gets to the point where I don't have time to do it anymore. But nevertheless, it's a failing, and I think it's something that the incoming steering committee must make, again, either assigning more comrades to the task, but certainly placing a priority on sending out more general reports to the membership. The HOPI steering committee list, in terms of the functioning of that committee, has been partially successful, I think. The difficulty of getting all comrades together from around the country, all comrades who are extremely busy in other campaigns, comrades like Peter Tatchell, who I've not seen him at HOPI steering committee this year, but I've seen him about a dozen times being arrested in various places around the world. The difficulty of getting comrades like that together in the room has been partially alleviated by the HOPI email discussion list. Peter has had input into, I think, the drafting of various leaflets over the past year, for example, which is good, but still not clearly ideal. And certainly, in terms of the production of materials, it's been facilitated by that email list. But in terms of the discussion and the resolution of political differences, or the proper expression of political differences, I think the email list has only been partially successful. My personal opinion is that the incoming steering committee should aim for at least 6 meetings, face-to-face meetings in the coming year, with the flexibility of organising more when and if needed, but at least 6. I think that is an absolute minimum in terms of the functioning of the campaign thus far, and certainly in terms of its increased tasks for the coming period. And we really should experiment with online meetings of the steering committee to actually draw members in. All members of HOPI are entitled to attend steering group meetings. There is a practical difficulty in that. If we can increase participation through online meetings, which I think, again, as I've indicated, have their problems, it is something that's worthwhile doing. I'm told I have to stand on this sticky cross here, and I'm having difficulty because it's actually coming out at the moment and it's fixing me to one point. I'll talk briefly about the sort of the meetings and the activity that we've so you have to see what I mean. The meetings and the activity that we've undertaken for the last 12 months or so. As I indicated at the beginning, I think the volume of activity, the volume of work that we've conducted has been at a high level. And in preparation for this report, I'm sure that if we looked at it in more detail, we'd find out that these are rough guesstimates rather than precise figures. Trawling through diaries and various action columns, I calculated something like 30 meetings during the course of the last 12 months. And a high percentage of those as local meetings. Meetings in Leeds, I think we've had 3 public meetings in Manchester.
Well, 7, but...
7?
That's right.
Very good. It's even more than I anticipated. I only put 3 in my diary. But a high percentage of those local meetings are meetings on campuses. We should also highlight, I think, a number of very successful gatherings that we had. I think our weekend school of June 14th, 15th, although it was fairly low in attendance, was a success. It was, I think, politically a success. It helped to clarification, and I think the intervention of John MacDonald at it was very useful in terms of us, in that sense, gaining a friend. The intervention around the TUC, although again a small team conducted that intervention, was a useful one and netted us 116 trade union contacts. We ought to clarify the question of, or qualify rather, the question of contacts, obviously. Something we must address in the coming year is that we have lists and lists of names, etc., but very often the details appear to us inaccurate, i.e. they're scribbled, etc. But nevertheless, it was successful. We gave out a great deal of literature done. The TUC and the Commons worked very hard. I think the press conference with the Iranian students was a good initiative. We did the Vino 4 demos with HOPI material. The NUS Fringe meeting was useful, and Chris Strafford standing as a HOPI College Students candidate for the block of 12. That was, again, a useful exercise in raising the profile of the campaign. In terms of the actual materials that we've put out over the past year, I think again this meeting has to think about what is required and think about really, again, upping our game to a certain extent. Apart from leaflets for local meetings, little new national material has been actually produced. For example, there is no dedicated material for trade union work, which is one of the areas we highlighted as a weakness, one of the areas we said we would pay particular attention to, and yet there is no dedicated material for that work. That clearly is a difficulty. And it was highlighted again. I think one of the I don't know if it was Robbie, but one of the comments at the TUC reported positive responses from a great many TUC delegates, but one in particular said, "Of course I support HOPI. I supported HOPI last year when you gave me exactly the same leaflet." Right? We're working very much with old materials, and partially this is a question of money, partially the question of the time that activists have to spend creating this stuff. But clearly we cannot go on if we are going to have the work of the campaign, the tempo of the work of the campaign, with materials that are simply being recycled from last year. Comments will notice we've got the new the postcard, which we've had for about a year now. We've reprinted those, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will also notice that the design for the leaflet for this year's national meeting, for this meeting, is exactly the same as the design for the leaflet from last year. And it was only due to my far-sighted intervention that we changed the colour at the last moment. Right? So we've obviously got a problem in terms of that needs to be addressed. I agree. Could you be please? The email bulletins that we've sent out have been more of a success. There's been roughly one a month covering meetings coming up, particular political developments in the Iranian movement, etc. And these go out to about 500 recipients, people who've signed petitions, signed up to have more information about the campaign and whose details we can actually read. On top of that, then, in terms of press releases and ads for particular meetings, they go to a wider list of press contacts, etc., of an extra 400. So the HOPI mailing list on that level, when we send out the top whack, is about 1,000. The website, however, is a problem for us, and again, there's no particular resolution that we have here, and I don't think passing a resolution solves the problem. But clearly it has the potential to be a major resource for us. The way it is set up at the moment, the difficulties of updating it, the fact that it has no person particularly in charge of editing it, of thinking about it, of how to present the campaign, putting new material on, is a problem. And so it's difficult to navigate around, it's difficult to find some information on, etc. It needs some, care and attention. Because it's something that could pay dividends for us. Last thing I want to say about the profile in terms of the materials that we put out, the volume has been reasonably high, even if some of it has been a little bit stale. The take-up that we've got, I think, has reflected the fact that it's been a slightly of a generalised type of nature. The take-up that we get from leaflets, etc., is fairly low. The take-up that we get from email mailings is fairly low, particularly in terms of the press mailings. So, as was floated again in the June school, it is probably worthwhile us giving some thought to how we actually increase the profile of HOPI in mainstream media. The membership has grown marginally over this 12 months, something like 120 people now. However, as was pointed out to me, a great many people beyond that actually think they're HOPI members, but actually aren't, because we've got no cash off them, and we haven't issued one of those little cards or whatever. So we must, again, rationalise that system. There's one there. Get out. I want to say something just briefly and finally about our political profile, because I think that really, for all the caveats about how the campaign has gone, etc., the functioning of the steering committee, the materials, etc., I think that has been the real success of HOPI over the past year, that we have taken the message of principled solidarity with the Iranian people, principled anti-war agitation, and increased that profile. I'll finish in 2 minutes. Sorry, I thought you were reading it. Nope. We've increased that profile immensely. I think it was important on March the 6th that we issued a leaflet to the demonstration in London, which was in solidarity with jail trade unionists in Iran, which differentiated the campaign politically, which actually said, all right, not all those who say they are on the side of the working class in Iran, all right, are principled anti-war activists, are principled anti-war movements. Indeed, they sometimes grab the banner of democracy in Iran in order to cover, all right, for what are essentially imperialist designs on that region. I think it was absolutely vital that HOPI did that. That helped raise our political campaign to define us as a campaign more distinctly. I think it's partially shown as well with some of the attacks that have come on HOPI. I don't want to go into the details of those comments. The comments who have been active will have experienced variance on one of two themes. One, you are stooges of US imperialism. Two, you believe in the Mullah's bomb. All right? Given where these attacks tend to come from, I think we're doing something right, to be honest with you. I think, by definition, we're doing something right. However, the thing I really would like to mention in terms of political profile, I suppose, is the affiliations this year. I won't run through all of them because there should be time for questions and contributions, but obviously PCF and ASLEF, the Labour Representation Committee, sort of Youth Network, etc. These are very important gains and triumphs, in that sense, for the campaign. The self-critical part of it is that this is not the result of systematic work. Right? This is the result of individual HOPI sympathisers, activists taking initiative. Excellent. We want people to take initiative. We also need systematic work. All right? But nevertheless, you know, the fact that we got those affiliations, the fact that so few people in the PCS conference, nobody in the ASLEF conference raised objections to this, it seems like common sense to working class activists, I think gives us enormous cause for optimism and a realisation that we're just scratching the surface of potential support for this campaign. And the last thing I'd like to mention, which is very important, it does take up a great deal of time of individual HOPI activists, but in terms of the profile of the campaign in Iran itself, I think has increased over this past year and has been encouraging in that sense, because we should not underestimate the fact that when activists in Iran are imprisoned, when they face repression of one sort or another, the idea that there are people in an imperialist centre like Britain who are standing with them, who are against the war, but nevertheless are against the regime that is oppressing them. I think that has a tremendous effect. And the fact that HOPI slogans have started to appear on banners and placards in Iran itself, I think is something that should make us very proud. So there we are. I think it's been a mixed bag in terms of the work of the year, but a tremendous optimism for the future.